I watched through my living room window as a middle-aged blonde woman in a lime green polo shirt marched across my lawn like she owned the place, heading straight for my garage. It was 7:30 on a Saturday morning in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had exactly 2 hours before my shift started at the precinct. The woman stopped at my open garage door, planted her hands on her hips, and started examining my belongings like she was conducting some kind of inspection. I had no idea who she was, but something told me my peaceful weekend morning was about to go sideways. I grabbed my coffee and stepped outside, still wearing my gym shorts and an old Arizona State shirt. The heat was already building, even in late October, and the desert sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns of Sunset Ridge Estates. I had moved into this community 6 months ago, looking for a quiet place after my divorce. The HOA seemed reasonable enough during the purchase process, just the usual rules about lawn care and exterior paint colors. I should have known better. "Can I help you?" I called out as I approached. The woman spun around, her face already pinched with disapproval. She looked to be in her early 50s, with shoulder-length hair that had been colored and styled to perfection. Her polo shirt had Sunset Ridge HOA Board President embroidered on it in gold lettering. "Are you Franklin Young?" "That's me," I said, taking a sip of my coffee. "I'm Patricia Henderson, HOA Board President. We need to discuss several violations you've accumulated over the past month." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what appeared to be photos. "Your grass is approximately 1/4 inch above the maximum allowed height of 3 inches. You've left your garbage bins visible from the street on a non-collection day. And this." She gestured dramatically toward my garage. "Your garage door has been open for more than 30 minutes on 3 separate occasions this week." I blinked at her, trying to process what I was hearing. "You're serious right now?" "The HOA rules are very clear, Mr. Young. We maintain property values by ensuring all homeowners adhere to community standards. You signed the covenant when you purchased your home." Patricia tapped something on her phone. "I'm documenting everything for the board meeting next week. You'll be receiving fine notices in the mail." "Look, I work long hours and I've been maintaining my property just fine. The grass looks great. I forgot to bring in the bins one day and I keep my garage open when I'm working on my car. None of that is hurting anyone." Patricia's expression hardened. "The rules exist for a reason. If we let one person slide, everyone will think they can do whatever they want. That's how neighborhoods decline." She walked past me into my garage, uninvited. "And speaking of your car work, when were you planning to remove this eyesore?" She was pointing at my lawn mower, a commercial-grade Toro I had purchased just 3 months ago for $800. It was sitting near my workbench, perfectly clean and well-maintained. "That's my lawn mower. What's wrong with it?" "It's visible from the street when your garage door is open. Equipment must be stored out of sight. I'm also concerned about potential oil or gasoline smells affecting neighboring properties." Patricia took several photos of the mower from different angles. "You have 48 hours to ensure it's properly stored, or you'll receive an additional fine." The cop in me was fighting hard against the homeowner who just wanted to be left alone. I dealt with actual criminals every day, real problems that affected real people. Having someone lecture me about my lawn mower being visible was testing every ounce of my patience. "I'll make sure to keep the garage door closed more often. Is there anything else?" "Yes, actually. Your mailbox post needs repainting. The approved color is colonial white, and yours appears to be aging. I'd say you have some fading and possibly a shade that's off from the original." Patricia made another note on her phone. "I'll add it to your violation list." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache forming. Is there a grace period for any of this, or do you just go straight to fines? You had a grace period. It's called the first 6 months of homeownership. After that, we expect full compliance. Patricia smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. Young. I hope we can count on your cooperation going forward. She walked away, leaving me standing in my garage wondering what I had gotten myself into. I finished my coffee, closed the garage door, and headed back inside to get ready for work. The Phoenix Police Department's North Precinct was where I had spent the last 8 years, working my way up from patrol to detective. I specialized in property crimes, which meant I spent most of my days investigating burglaries, thefts, and vandalism. The irony of being threatened with fines by my HOA president while I was out protecting the community was not lost on me. The next 2 days passed without incident. I made sure to keep my garage door closed, moved my lawn mower to a less visible spot, and even trimmed my grass another 1/4 inch just to be safe. Wednesday evening, I came home from a long day of investigating a string of garage burglaries in the neighborhood just north of Sunset Ridge. I pulled into my driveway, hit the garage door opener, and immediately noticed something was wrong. My lawn mower was gone. I parked my car and walked into the garage, thinking maybe I had moved it and forgotten. But no, the space where it had been sitting was empty except for a small oil stain on the concrete. My toolbox was still there, my workbench untouched, my car cleaning supplies exactly where I had left them. Only the mower was missing. I checked the side gate to my backyard. Locked. I checked all the garage windows. Secure. The only way someone could have taken that mower was through the main garage door, which meant they either had the code or had done it while the door was open. I had not left it open since Patricia's visit. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. HOA violation resolved. Your garage is now in compliance. Thank you for your cooperation. Patricia Henderson, HOA Board President. I read the message 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rising with each pass. She did not just do what I thought she did. I immediately called the number, but it went straight to voicemail. This is Patricia Henderson. Please leave a message and I'll get back to you within 48 hours. Patricia, this is Franklin Young from 2847 Desert View Lane. I need you to call me back immediately regarding my property that's gone missing. This is urgent. I kept my voice professional, but inside I was furious. I went back into the house and pulled up the HOA directory on my laptop. Patricia lived at 2901 Desert View Lane, just 3 houses down from me on the same street. I grabbed my keys and walked over there, the evening heat still radiating off the pavement. Patricia's house was immaculate, of course. The lawn was perfectly manicured, the flower beds were color-coordinated, and her mailbox post gleamed with fresh colonial white paint. I rang the doorbell and waited, trying to keep my emotions in check. She opened the door wearing designer yoga pants and holding a glass of white wine. Mr. Young, I wasn't expecting visitors. Where's my lawn mower, Patricia? I'm sorry, what are you talking about? My $800 lawn mower that was in my garage this morning and disappeared this afternoon, right before you sent me a text saying my garage was now in compliance. I held up my phone showing her message. Patricia took a sip of her wine, completely unbothered. If your property has been stolen, you should file a police report. I can't help you with that. So you're denying that you took it, Mr. Young. I don't appreciate your accusatory tone. I'm a volunteer board president trying to maintain our community standards. I have neither the time nor the inclination to involve myself with your personal property. She started to close the door. Good evening. I put my hand on the door, not pushing but stopping it from closing. Patricia, if you took my mower, you need to return it now. What you've done is theft, and I will pursue this legally. Remove your hand from my door or I'll call the police. Her voice had gone cold. I stepped back, letting the door close. I stood there on her perfect porch for a moment, processing what had just happened. In my 8 years as a cop, I had dealt with all kinds of criminals: drug dealers, armed robbers, domestic abusers. But I had never encountered someone so brazen about committing theft while hiding behind a position of petty authority. I walked back to my house and did exactly what she suggested. I filed a police report. I called the non-emergency number, explained the situation, and requested an officer come out to take my statement. 20 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up and Officer Martinez stepped out. I knew him from the precinct, a good cop with about 4 years on the job. "Detective Young, heard you had some trouble," Martinez said, pulling out his notepad. "Someone stole my lawn mower from my garage. I have strong reason to believe it was my HOA president, but I can't prove it yet." I explained the whole situation, from Patricia's initial visit to her text message to my confrontation at her door. Martinez wrote everything down, took photos of my garage, and collected the text message evidence. "I'll write up the report, but you know how this goes. Without physical evidence or witnesses, it's going to be tough to pursue." "I know, but I want it documented, and I'm going to figure out where she put it." "You want me to go talk to her?" "Not yet. Let me handle this through proper channels first." I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. If Patricia thought she was just dealing with a regular homeowner who would give up after filing a report, she was in for a surprise. After Martinez left, I spent the next hour thinking through my options. Patricia was smart enough not to keep the mower at her house, at least not where it would be visible. She had probably moved it to a storage unit or maybe the HOA's maintenance facility. Sunset Ridge had a small building near the community pool where they kept landscaping equipment and pool supplies. Thursday morning, I decided to take a different approach. Instead of going straight to work, I drove to the HOA management company's office in Scottsdale. Sunset Ridge contracted with Premier Community Management, a company that handled the day-to-day operations for dozens of HOAs across the Phoenix metro area. The receptionist greeted me with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm Franklin Young, a homeowner at Sunset Ridge Estates. I need to speak with whoever manages our account about a serious issue with the board president." "Let me see if Rachel is available. She's your community manager." The receptionist made a quick call, and a few minutes later, a woman in her 30s appeared, looking somewhat harried. "Mr. Young, I'm Rachel Cooper. Why don't you come back to my office?" She led me to a small conference room with stacks of folders covering every surface. "Sorry for the mess. We're in the middle of budget season." "What's going on at Sunset Ridge?" I explained everything, showing her the violation photos Patricia had sent, the text message about my garage being in compliance, and the police report I had filed. Rachel's expression grew more concerned with each detail. "This is very serious. If Patricia is actually taking residents' property, that's not just a violation of her duties, it's criminal." Rachel pulled up some files on her laptop. "Let me look at the violation records she's filed. We require board members to document everything through our system." She scrolled through several screens, frowning. "That's odd. Patricia has filed over 200 violation notices in the past 6 months alone. That's extraordinarily high for a community of only 90 homes. Most of our HOAs average maybe 20 to 30 violations per month total." "She seems very focused on enforcing every minor rule," I said. "It goes beyond focus. Some of these violations are incredibly petty. Someone's trash can lid was slightly ajar. A garden hose was visible next to a house. A car was parked in a driveway facing the wrong direction. Rachel shook her head. We've had 3 homeowners file formal complaints about harassment, and 5 others have requested payment plans because they can't afford all the fines. How much power does she have as board president? Officially, the board president can issue violation notices, but fines are supposed to be approved by a majority of the board. Patricia has been acting pretty unilaterally, though. The other board members are either intimidated by her or don't want to deal with the drama. Rachel pulled up another screen. I've tried to rein her in, but she claims she's following the covenant to the letter. What about the HOA's maintenance facility? Does Patricia have access to it? Yes, all board members have keys. It's where we store the pool equipment, some landscaping tools and maintenance supplies. Why? Because I think that's where my lawn mower is. Rachel considered this for a moment. I can't just give you access to the facility without board approval, but I can do an inventory check. We're required to maintain records of all HOA property. If your mower is in there and it's not on the inventory list, that would be evidence of theft. When can you do that? I can go this afternoon. I'll call you if I find anything. Rachel made a note in her planner. In the meantime, I'm going to recommend to the full board that Patricia be suspended from her duties pending an investigation. This has gone too far. I thanked Rachel and headed to work, feeling like I was finally making progress. The precinct was buzzing with activity when I arrived. My partner, Detective Sarah Chen, was already at her desk reviewing case files. "You're late," she said without looking up. "Everything okay? HOA drama. Long story." I sat down and logged into my computer, trying to focus on actual police work. We had 3 active burglary cases and a commercial theft that needed attention. "Wait, you have HOA drama? You've been in that house for like 6 months." Sarah spun her chair around, suddenly interested. Apparently, 6 months is long enough to make enemies with the board president. She's been citing me for violations, and now my lawn mower is missing. "You think the HOA president stole your lawn mower?" Sarah started laughing, then stopped when she saw my expression. "Oh, you're serious. Did you file a report last night?" Martinez came out. "Please tell me you're not investigating your own case." "Of course not. That would be inappropriate." I pulled up my burglary files. "I'm just doing what any concerned citizen would do, following proper procedures, gathering evidence, working with the HOA management company." Sarah gave me a knowing look. "Just be careful. The last thing you need is an accusation that you're using your position to harass a civilian." She was right, and I knew it. I had to be very careful about how I handled this. If I pushed too hard or crossed any lines, Patricia could claim I was abusing my authority. I needed to let the system work while quietly gathering evidence. My phone rang around 2 that afternoon. It was Rachel from the management company. "Mr. Young, I'm at the HOA facility. You need to see this. What did you find?" "Your lawn mower. And about a dozen other items that don't belong to the HOA. Garden tools, a leaf blower, some outdoor furniture, even a portable generator. I'm looking at the maintenance logs and none of this stuff is on our inventory list." "Can you document everything? Take photos and make a list of all the items." "Already doing it. I've also called the other board members for an emergency meeting tonight. This is way beyond my authority level." Rachel paused. "There's something else." I found violation notices attached to most of these items. Different homeowners, different dates, but all signed by Patricia. I felt a grim satisfaction settling in. Patricia had not just stolen from me. She had been systematically taking property from multiple homeowners under the guise of HOA enforcement. "Rachel, I need you to secure that facility and not let anyone else in there. This is now evidence in a criminal investigation. Should I call the police? I am the police. But yes, we need to do this by the book. Call the non-emergency number, request an officer, and tell them you've discovered evidence of multiple thefts. I'll notify my sergeant and make sure this gets assigned to someone else. I can't investigate since I'm a victim. I hung up and walked to my sergeant's office. Sergeant Linda Morrison had been with the department for 20 years and had seen everything. I explained the situation, emphasizing that I needed to be kept separate from the investigation. "You're telling me your HOA president has been running a theft operation disguised as code enforcement?" Morrison looked skeptical. "That's a new one." "I know how it sounds, but the management company just found my mower and a bunch of other stolen property in the HOA's storage facility. I need this assigned to another detective, someone with no connection to me." Morrison thought for a moment. "I'll give it to Detective Williams. He's solid, been working property crimes for 3 years. You step back completely, understand? No checking the case files, no talking to witnesses, no involvement whatsoever. Understood?" Detective James Williams was at his desk when Morrison briefed him. He was a meticulous investigator, known for his attention to detail and his ability to build airtight cases. If anyone could nail Patricia Henderson, it was Williams. "Wild story," Williams said after Morrison finished. "But if the evidence is there, it's there. I'll head over to the HOA facility and start processing the scene." I spent the rest of the day forcing myself to focus on my own cases, trying not to think about what was happening in my neighborhood. Sarah kept giving me concerned looks, but she did not push. Around 6, I headed home, taking the long way to avoid driving past Patricia's house. When I turned onto Desert View Lane, I saw 3 police vehicles parked at the HOA facility, including Williams' unmarked car. Several of my neighbors were standing on their lawns, watching the activity with interest. I pulled into my garage, closed the door, and tried to act like I was not dying to know what was happening. My phone rang 30 minutes later. It was Rachel. "The police are processing everything. They found property belonging to 15 different homeowners. Detective Williams is starting to call people to come identify their stuff." Did anyone confront Patricia yet? That's the thing. She showed up while the police were there, demanding to know what was going on. When Williams told her he was investigating theft complaints, she tried to claim all that property was seized due to violations and was being held until the homeowners paid their fines. That's not how HOA enforcement works, and she knows it. Williams told her the same thing. He asked her to come down to the station for an interview. She refused and said she was calling her lawyer. Rachel sounded stressed. "The other board members are furious. They had no idea she was doing this. We're holding an emergency meeting at 8 to vote on her suspension." I thanked Rachel and sat down on my couch, trying to process everything. Part of me felt vindicated that Patricia was finally being held accountable. But another part of me, the cop part, was troubled by how far she had gone. This was not just someone on a power trip. This was calculated theft, repeated over months, targeting vulnerable homeowners who probably could not afford to fight back. Around 7:30, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw Detective Williams standing there with his notepad. "Detective Young, got a minute?" Williams said when I opened the door. "Of course. Come in." Williams sat in my living room, looking around at the modest furniture and the moving boxes I still had not unpacked in the corner. "Nice place. I can see why you wanted to move to a quiet neighborhood." "It was quiet until recently." "Yeah, about that." Williams flipped open his notepad. "I'm officially interviewing you as a victim and witness. I know this is awkward since we work together, but I need your statement on record." I walked Williams through everything again, from Patricia's first visit to the text message to my confrontation at her door. He took detailed notes, asked clarifying questions, and recorded our conversation with my permission. "Here's where we are," Williams said when I finished. "We've recovered property from 15 homeowners, total estimated value around $12,000. That's felony theft. We've got documentation showing Patricia issued violations for most of these items right before they disappeared. And we've got multiple witnesses who saw her accessing the HOA facility around the times items went missing. What about her claim that she was seizing property for violations? I talked to 3 different attorneys this afternoon. They all said the same thing. HOAs can fine homeowners, they can put liens on houses, they can even foreclose in extreme cases, but they absolutely cannot seize personal property without a court order. What she did is straight-up theft, no matter how she tries to justify it. So what happens now? I'm presenting the case to the prosecutor tomorrow morning. Based on the evidence, I'm confident they'll approve an arrest warrant. We'll probably take her into custody tomorrow afternoon." Williams closed his notepad. "I wanted to give you a heads up since you're involved. This is going to get messy." After Williams left, I tried to eat dinner but had no appetite. I kept thinking about Patricia's expression when she told me to file a police report, so confident that nothing would come of it. She had no idea I was a detective. She had no idea I would actually follow through. And she definitely had no idea her entire operation was about to come crashing down. The next morning, I stayed home from work. Sergeant Morrison had suggested I take a personal day to avoid any appearance of impropriety while the arrest went down. I spent the morning cleaning my house, working out in my garage, and trying not to check my phone every 5 minutes. At 1:45, I saw an unmarked police car pull up in front of Patricia's house, followed by a patrol unit. Williams and Martinez got out, walked to Patricia's front door, and knocked. I watched from my living room window, feeling a complex mix of satisfaction and something else I could not quite name. Maybe it was sadness that it had come to this, that someone's need for control had driven them to commit crimes against their own neighbors. Patricia opened the door, and I could see her face go pale, even from 3 houses away. Williams said something, probably reading her rights. Patricia shook her head vigorously, gesturing with her hands. This went on for about 2 minutes before Williams held up what looked like a document. The arrest warrant. Patricia's shoulders slumped. She said something to Williams, then stepped back inside. Martinez waited at the door while Williams followed her in, probably letting her grab shoes and a phone. A few minutes later, they emerged. Patricia was in handcuffs, being walked to Williams' car. Several neighbors had come out to watch, including an elderly couple from across the street and a young family from next door. Patricia kept her head down, refusing to make eye contact with anyone as Williams helped her into the back seat of his car. The patrol unit followed them as they drove away, leaving the neighborhood buzzing with speculation. My phone started ringing immediately. First it was Rachel from the management company, then 2 different neighbors whose numbers I had exchanged at community events, then a reporter from the local news who somehow had gotten my number. I ignored all of them and went for a long drive through the desert, needing space to think. When I got back that evening, there was a note taped to my front door. It was from my neighbor directly next door, a software engineer named Marcus, who I had talked to a few times about basketball. "Hey Franklin, heard about the HOA situation. A bunch of us are meeting at the community center tomorrow at 7 to talk about what happens next. Hope you can make it." I had been so focused on dealing with Patricia that I had not thought about the aftermath. Sunset Ridge needed a functional HOA board, and with Patricia gone, there would be a vacuum. The community center was packed when I arrived Saturday evening. At least 60 homeowners had shown up, which was about 2/3 of the neighborhood. The energy in the room was a mixture of anger, relief, and confusion. Rachel from the management company was there, along with the 3 remaining board members, an accountant named Robert, a retired teacher named Helen, and a landscape architect named Tom. Robert stood at the front of the room, looking uncomfortable as everyone found seats. "Thank you all for coming," Robert began. "I know everyone has questions about what's been happening. I want to start by saying that Helen, Tom, and I had no knowledge of Patricia's actions. We're as shocked as you are." "How could you not know?" someone called out from the back. "She was fining people left and right. She was stealing our stuff." "Patricia ran the board with an iron fist," Helen said quietly. "She insisted on handling all enforcement personally. She told us she was following the covenant and that we needed to trust her expertise. Anytime we questioned her, she accused us of not caring about property values." Tom added, "We should have pushed back harder. We should have demanded more transparency. That's on us, and we're sorry." The room erupted with people talking over each other, sharing their own stories of Patricia's harassment. One woman had received 17 violation notices in 3 months. A man said Patricia had called code enforcement on him for having a commercial vehicle in his driveway, even though he was a plumber and it was his work van. Another family said they almost had to pull their kids out of private school to pay the HOA fines. "What happens to all the fines we paid?" someone asked. "Some of us have given thousands of dollars to the HOA because Patricia said we had to." Rachel stood up. "We're conducting a complete audit of the HOA's finances and all violation notices issued in the past year. Any fines that were improperly assessed will be refunded. This is going to take time, but we're committed to making it right." "What about Patricia? Is she going to jail?" "That's up to the criminal justice system," Robert said. "She was arrested yesterday on multiple counts of theft. Her preliminary hearing is scheduled for next week." I had been sitting quietly in the back, trying to stay out of the spotlight. But Marcus noticed me and called out, "Franklin, you're a cop, right? Can you explain what's going to happen with the criminal case?" All eyes turned to me. So much for staying anonymous. I stood up slowly. "I'm a detective with Phoenix PD, but I'm not working this case since I'm one of the victims. What I can tell you is that property theft is taken seriously, especially when it involves multiple victims and amounts to thousands of dollars. The prosecutor will decide what charges to file, but based on what I know, Patricia is looking at felony charges. Will she do prison time? That depends on a lot of factors. Her criminal history, the specific charges, whether she takes a plea deal or goes to trial. I can't predict the outcome." I sat back down, hoping that was enough. The meeting continued for another hour, with Rachel and the board members outlining a plan to reform the HOA's operations. They proposed new bylaws that would require board approval for any fine over $100, mandatory mediation before legal action, and term limits for board positions. They also opened nominations for a new president, saying they wanted fresh leadership. As people were leaving, several neighbors came up to thank me for standing up to Patricia. An older woman named Dorothy, who lived at the end of my street, grabbed my hand with tears in her eyes. She took my husband's generator. He passed away last year, and it was one of the few things I had left from him. I thought it was gone forever. Thank you for getting it back. I did not know what to say. I had just been trying to get my own lawn mower back. I had not set out to be anyone's hero. But looking at Dorothy's grateful face, I realized this was bigger than my $800. Patricia had been terrorizing this entire community, and someone had finally made her stop. The following week, I went back to work and tried to focus on my regular cases. Williams kept me updated on Patricia's case, though I stayed formally removed from the investigation. Her lawyer had tried to argue that she was acting in her official capacity as HOA president and had made some mistakes in judgment, but had not intended to steal anything. The prosecutor was not buying it. Patricia's preliminary hearing was on a Thursday morning. I did not attend, but Williams filled me in afterward. The judge had found probable cause for 5 counts of felony theft and 2 counts of misconduct involving a homeowners association, a specific Arizona statute I had not even known existed. Patricia was released on bond with conditions that she have no contact with any Sunset Ridge residents and stay away from the neighborhood entirely. Her lawyer already approached me about a plea deal, Williams said. She wants to plead to misdemeanor theft, pay restitution, and do community service. What did the prosecutor say? No way. Not with 15 victims and clear evidence of an ongoing scheme. They're offering her a deal to plead to 2 felony theft counts in exchange for dropping the other charges. She'd be looking at probation, restitution, and a permanent felony record. Think she'll take it? Williams shrugged. Her lawyer says she's considering it. Going to trial would be risky. We've got documentation, witnesses, and physical evidence. She'd probably lose and face more time. 2 weeks later, Patricia accepted the plea deal. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony theft, agreed to pay full restitution to all victims, and was sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation with 100 hours of community service. The judge also issued a permanent injunction barring her from serving on any HOA board in Arizona. Rachel from the management company coordinated the return of all stolen property and the refund of improper fines. I got my lawn mower back, along with a check for $250 in fines I had paid for violations that were later deemed improper. Dorothy got her late husband's generator. A young couple got their patio furniture. A retiree got his leaf blower and hedge trimmer. The HOA held elections in December, and a new board was seated in January. The new president was a civil engineer named Jennifer who had lived in Sunset Ridge for 8 years and had a reputation for being reasonable and fair. One of her first acts was to review and streamline the covenant, eliminating some of the more ridiculous rules that Patricia had enforced so zealously. The rule about garage doors being open for more than 30 minutes was removed entirely. The grass height requirement was relaxed by ½ an inch. Garbage bins could now remain visible for 24 hours after collection. It was a small victory, but it mattered. People felt like they could breathe again in their own neighborhood. The constant fear of violation notices and fines evaporated. Neighbors started talking to each other again, having conversations on the street instead of rushing inside to avoid Patricia's scrutiny. I settled into a comfortable routine at my house. I kept my garage door open on weekends when I was working on my car or doing yard work. Nobody complained. I used my lawn mower every Saturday morning, keeping my grass at a respectable 3¼ inches. Nobody measured it. One evening in late January, I was grilling dinner in my backyard when Marcus knocked on my side gate. "Hey, got a minute?" "Sure, come on back. Want a burger?" "I'm good, thanks." Marcus sat down on one of my patio chairs. "I wanted to run something by you. The new board is looking at improving neighborhood safety. We've had a few car break-ins lately and people are worried. Would you be willing to come to next month's meeting and give some advice? You know, cop-to-citizen stuff, not official police business. Yeah, I can do that. Most property crime is opportunistic. Simple things like locking doors, keeping valuables out of sight, and having good lighting make a huge difference. That's exactly the kind of information people need. Marcus stood to leave, then paused. You know, when you moved in last year, nobody really knew anything about you. You kept to yourself, didn't come to community events, and just kind of flew under the radar. I think people appreciate that you stood up to Patricia, but more than that, they appreciate that you didn't make it about being a cop. You just wanted your lawn mower back like anyone else would. After he left, I thought about what he said. When I bought this house, I had been looking for anonymity. A quiet place to rebuild my life after my divorce, somewhere I could just be Franklin instead of Detective Young. Patricia had inadvertently given me that. By forcing me to stand up for myself, she had helped me become part of the community instead of just another resident hiding in his house. In March, I attended the HOA meeting to talk about property crime prevention. About 40 homeowners showed up, and I spent an hour answering questions and giving practical advice. We discussed neighborhood watch programs, security cameras, motion sensor lights, and how to report suspicious activity. It was the kind of community policing that actually worked, neighbors and police working together without drama or conflict. Jennifer thanked me afterward. This was exactly what we needed. Patricia ran this HOA like a dictatorship. We want to build something different, a real community where people look out for each other. That's how it should be, I said. HOAs exist to maintain common areas and protect property values, not to micromanage people's lives. I heard the management company is using what happened here as a case study. They're training their other HOA boards about the warning signs of overreach and abuse of power. Jennifer shook her head. It's sad that it took criminal charges to wake everyone up, but at least some good came from it. I ran into Dorothy at the grocery store a few weeks later. She was loading bags into her car and waved when she saw me. Franklin, how are you? Doing well, Dorothy. How about you? Much better now. I've been sleeping through the night for the first time in months. I didn't realize how much stress Patricia was causing until she was gone. Dorothy closed her trunk. I'm actually enjoying my house again, working in my garden without worrying about whether my flowers are the approved colors. I'm glad to hear that. You know what the best part is? The neighborhood feels friendly again. People are smiling, talking to each other, having block parties. We're planning a spring barbecue at the community center next month. You should come. I promised I would, and I meant it. The neighborhood really had changed. Or maybe it had just gone back to what it should have been all along. In late April, I got a notification that Patricia had completed her community service hours and was current on her restitution payments. She had gotten a job as a receptionist at a dental office in Glendale, far from Sunset Ridge. I had not seen her since her arrest, and I had no desire to. What she did had been wrong, but I did not take any pleasure in her downfall. I just wanted to live my life in peace. Sarah asked me about the whole situation one day at work over lunch. So, was it worth it? All the drama with the HOA. I don't know if worth it is the right phrase. I didn't have much choice. She stole my property and I responded the way anyone would. But you knew it would escalate. You knew once you started pulling that thread, the whole thing would unravel. Sarah took a bite of her sandwich. Most people would have just let it go, eaten the loss, and moved on. Maybe. But that's not who I am. I thought about it for a moment. I spend every day investigating crimes. I see victims who feel helpless, who think the system doesn't work for them. If I won't stand up for myself, how can I ask them to trust me to stand up for them? That's very philosophical for a guy who just wanted his lawn mower back. I laughed. Yeah, well, it was a really nice lawn mower. The spring barbecue happened in May, and nearly the entire neighborhood turned out. There were grills set up around the community pool, kids playing in the water, and adults standing around talking and laughing. It was the kind of scene that real estate agents use in their marketing materials, the fantasy of community that people buy into when they purchase a home. But this time, it felt real. People were genuinely happy to be there, enjoying their neighborhood without fear or anxiety. I spent the afternoon talking to neighbors I had never met, learning about their lives and their families. Marcus introduced me to his wife and kids. Dorothy brought her famous potato salad and regaled a group of us with stories about Sunset Ridge in the early days, before HOA boards and covenant restrictions. Jennifer made a short speech thanking everyone for coming together and supporting the positive changes in the community. She specifically mentioned the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. She did not mention Patricia by name or reference the theft case, but everyone knew what she was talking about. Several people glanced in my direction, and I felt my face get hot. As the sun set over the desert and the temperature finally dropped below 90 degrees, I found myself sitting by the pool with a group of neighbors, talking about nothing in particular. Someone made a joke about HOA violations, and everyone laughed. The tension that had defined this community for so long had finally broken. I drove home that night feeling something I had not felt in a long time: contentment. My house was no longer just a place to sleep between shifts. It was my home, in a neighborhood that felt like a real community. The divorce had left me feeling disconnected and isolated, questioning whether I wanted to put down roots anywhere. But somehow, through the chaos of Patricia's theft scheme and the subsequent fallout, I had found exactly what I was looking for. The irony was not lost on me. If Patricia had never shown up at my house that Saturday morning, if she had never stolen my lawn mower, I probably would have continued keeping to myself. I would have gone to work, come home, and never really engaged with the community around me. Her criminal behavior had forced me out of my shell and into something better. That summer, I was nominated for the HOA board. I initially declined, having no interest in the politics and meetings. But several neighbors convinced me that having someone with a legal background who understood property rights would be valuable. I reluctantly agreed to serve as the board's legal advisor, a non-voting position that let me contribute without taking on too much responsibility. It turned out to be more interesting than I expected. I helped review contracts with vendors, advised on liability issues, and made sure the board's actions stayed within the bounds of the law. I also served as a check on any impulses toward overreach, reminding the board that their job was to maintain common areas and enforce reasonable rules, not to control every aspect of homeowners' lives. In August, I got a call from a homeowner in a different Phoenix HOA. Her board president had been issuing excessive fines and threatening legal action for minor violations. She had heard about the Patricia Henderson case and wanted advice on how to fight back. I walked her through the proper procedures, explained her rights under Arizona HOA law, and gave her contact information for Rachel at the management company. A month later, she called back to thank me. The board president had been removed after an investigation revealed similar abuse of power. It made me realize that Patricia was not unique. All across the valley, there were HOA board members who saw their positions as opportunities for control rather than service. Some were just on power trips, enjoying the ability to tell their neighbors what to do. Others genuinely believed they were protecting property values, but had lost sight of the human cost of their enforcement actions. And a few, like Patricia, crossed the line into criminal behavior. I started getting calls every few weeks from homeowners dealing with HOA problems. I was not a lawyer and could not give legal advice, but I could explain the system and point people toward resources. Some cases resolved quickly with a conversation between the homeowner and their board. Others required management company intervention or legal action. A few became criminal cases when board members were caught stealing money or property. Sarah teased me about becoming the unofficial HOA cop. You're like the Batman of property owners associations, fighting tyranny one covenant violation at a time. That's ridiculous. I'm just helping people understand their rights. Uh-huh. How many HOA cases have you consulted on in the past 3 months? I had to think about it. Maybe 15. And how many times have you been quoted in news articles about HOA abuse? That's different. Reporters asked me to comment because of the Patricia Henderson case. You're a minor celebrity in the HOA reform community. Own it. She was exaggerating, but there was some truth to what she said. The Patricia Henderson case had gotten significant media attention, partly because it was such a bizarre story. HOA president steals residents' property had been a headline in multiple local news outlets. I had given several interviews explaining how the theft scheme worked and what homeowners should do if they suspect abuse by their HOA board. Some HOA board members had criticized the media coverage, saying it made all HOAs look bad. They argued that Patricia was an outlier and that most boards operated ethically. They were probably right, but that did not mean the criticism was unwarranted. HOAs had enormous power over people's homes and lives, and that power needed to be checked. In October, I was invited to speak at a community forum on HOA reform organized by a state representative who was considering new legislation. About 200 people attended, including homeowners, board members, property managers, and real estate professionals. The energy in the room was intense, with strong opinions on all sides. I spoke about my experience with Patricia, emphasizing that the existing laws had worked. She had been arrested, prosecuted, and convicted. The system had functioned as it should. But I also acknowledged that many homeowners faced HOA abuse that did not rise to the level of criminal behavior. Excessive fines, selective enforcement, and lack of due process were common complaints that needed to be addressed. The representative took extensive notes and promised to work on legislation that would strengthen homeowner protections while preserving HOA's ability to maintain communities. It was a delicate balance, and I was not sure it was possible to satisfy everyone. But I appreciated that someone was trying. By November, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Work was busy but manageable. My house was finally fully unpacked and decorated, and I had a solid group of friends in the neighborhood. I was even dating someone, a teacher I had met at a community event who thought the whole HOA saga was hilarious. One evening, I was working in my garage with the door open, changing the oil on my car. My lawn mower sat in the corner, still running perfectly. I heard footsteps and looked up to see Dorothy walking past with her small dog. "Evening, Franklin," she called out. "Garage door's been open for an hour. Should I report you to the HOA?" I laughed. "I'll take my chances." She waved and continued down the street, her dog stopping to sniff every mailbox post. It was such a simple, normal moment, the kind that would have been impossible a year ago when Patricia ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist. The freedom to work in my own garage with the door open, without fear of violation notices or property seizure, was something I would never take for granted again. As I finished with my car and cleaned up my tools, I thought about everything that had happened since that Saturday morning when Patricia first showed up at my door. The conflict, the investigation, the arrest, the reforms, the new community that had emerged from the chaos. It had been exhausting and frustrating, and sometimes infuriating. But it had also been necessary. Patricia had eventually written apology letters to all her victims as part of her probation requirements. Mine arrived in March, a typed page expressing regret for her actions and acknowledging the harm she had caused. It felt hollow and obligatory, the kind of apology written because a judge ordered it rather than from genuine remorse. I read it once and filed it away. I did not need her apology. What I needed was what I already had. My property returned, the peace of my neighborhood restored, and the knowledge that standing up to abuse was always worth it, even when it was difficult and messy. The lawn mower sat in my garage, a constant reminder of everything that had happened. Sometimes I looked at it and thought about how much trouble an $800 piece of equipment had caused. But mostly, I thought about Dorothy's generator, her late husband's tool that she thought was gone forever. I thought about the young couple's patio furniture, the retiree's leaf blower, all the stolen property that represented real loss to real people. Patricia had thought she could take whatever she wanted, hiding behind her HOA board position and counting on people being too intimidated to fight back. She had been wrong, not because I was a cop, but because people had limits. Push them hard enough, take enough away from them, and they will push back. My being a detective had certainly helped with knowing how to navigate the system, but any homeowner could have done what I did. File a police report, work with the management company, gather evidence, and let the justice system work. That was the real lesson from all of this. You did not have to be a cop to stand up to abuse of power. You just had to be willing to document what was happening, follow the proper procedures, and not back down when someone tried to intimidate you. The system was not perfect, but it was there, ready to work for anyone who used it. I closed my garage door and went inside, ready to start another week. Tomorrow I would go back to investigating property crimes, helping other people recover from theft and vandalism. But tonight, I was just a homeowner in a peaceful neighborhood, grateful for a drama-free HOA and a lawn mower that was exactly where it belonged. The Sunset Ridge HOA board continued to function smoothly under Jennifer's leadership. Fines dropped dramatically. Disputes were resolved through conversation instead of violation notices. And the neighborhood maintained its property values without the constant conflict that had defined Patricia's tenure. The community barbecues became a regular thing, happening every few months and drawing bigger crowds each time. I eventually did buy a new mailbox post and painted it colonial white, but that was because I wanted to, not because anyone threatened me with fines. Small distinction, maybe, but it mattered. Everything about where I lived felt like a choice now rather than an obligation enforced under threat of punishment. In December, the management company sent out their annual survey asking homeowners to rate their satisfaction with the HOA. Sunset Ridge's scores had jumped dramatically compared to the previous year. Rachel included a personal note thanking me for my role in the changes, though I still maintained I had just wanted my lawn mower back. Everything else had been a natural consequence of that single act of standing up for myself. The Patricia Henderson case closed officially in January when she completed her probation requirements and paid her final restitution installment. Williams told me she had moved out of state, starting over somewhere in Nevada where nobody knew her history. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, but I was not particularly optimistic. People who saw nothing wrong with stealing from their neighbors under the guise of rule enforcement rarely developed genuine insight into their behavior. But that was not my problem anymore. My problem was living my life, doing my job, and enjoying my home. The garage door was open whenever I wanted it open. My grass was whatever height looked good. My mailbox post gleamed with fresh colonial white paint that I had chosen to apply. And my lawn mower sat in the corner of my garage, a permanent reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of standing up for yourself can change everything.